Now that we have learned about different types of operators in Prometheus, it's time to learn about the functions in Prometheus. So in this lecture and the next 3 lectures, so in total of 4 lectures, I will try to explain the functions of Prometheus to you. The functions are very useful and you will need them when you design dashboards. So the first function that we have is called absent. So the absent function is to check to see if an instant vector has any elements in it or is it empty. So the absent is a bit confusing because you would expect that if the instant vector that we pass to it has no value, then we get an empty result, but it's opposite. So the instant vector that we pass to absent, if it has any values, the absent function returns an empty result. Otherwise, it will return an instant vector that has only one item and the value is 1. So let's go to Prometheus. Okay, we are in Prometheus and I just use a metric such as node CPU seconds total. It comes from node exporter and you see that it has so many values. Now, if I wrap this around absent function, you will see that we get an empty result because it does have items. Now, if I pass a filter that is basically returning nothing, for example, I pass some random string to CPU, we will see that we get an instant vector which has only one element and that element has a value of 1. The name of that element is kind of not predictable. Prometheus tries to be smart and come up with a name, but you always get one item with value of 1. So that's basically how you can check the return value. Okay, we also have a function called absent over time, which is exactly like absent. Instead of instant vector, we pass a range vector to it. We have this example that we just saw. Now, if I pass a time to it, for example, say 1 hour, we get an error because absent cannot accept range vectors. Instead, we have to use absent over time, and then it acts just like absent. For example, if I turn my vector to, again, CPU equal to a random string, we will see that again we get an instant vector where it has only one item and that one item has a value of 1. So we learned that both absent and absent over time return instant vector, although absent over time accepts a range vector. You pass a range vector to it, but return type is not range vector, it's an instant vector. We also have functions that are used to do mathematics. For example, abs converts all the values in an instant vector to their absolute value. For example, they turn -5 to 5. We have sail for sailing. That converts all the values in a given instant vector to their nearest largest integer value. For example, 1.6 is turned to 2. Floor is kind of opposite. It turns all the items, the value of all the items in an instant vector to the smallest available number. For example, 1.6 turns to 1. We also have 3 functions that are very, very important and they are widely used. They are clamp, clamp min, and clamp max. Clamp is basically like trimming. Using clamp function, you can say any item or any element in an instant vector whose value is smaller than the minimum value that I specify, or its value is larger than the maximum amount that I specify, should be just ignored and removed from the result. If you only want to apply such rule on minimum value, you use clamp min, or if you want to apply such rule on the maximum value, you can use clamp max. But if you want to have both minimum and maximum, you can use clamp. So we are back to Prometheus. I remove this absent over time function and I remove anything after that. So we will see that node CPU seconds total has quite a few items and the values are very different. Now, what if I say, for example, this item is 288. What if I say anything that is smaller than 300 should be ignored? So we can use clamp min, and then after the instant vector, I will say 300. So if I run this, you will see that the smallest value we get is 300 and there is nothing that is smaller than 300. Now, what if I say, for example, say one of the items, this is 176,390. What if I say clamp max and I say I want all the values that are greater than 150,000 to be ignored. And as you see, we have small numbers, but the largest number we get is 150,000. There is nothing larger than 150,000. Now, if I just use clamp and I specify 300 for minimum and 150k for maximum, you will see that the smallest value we get is 300 and the largest we ever get is 150,000. So this is good for trimming your time series, especially when you visualize it. For example, we will see that how we visualize the vectors in Grafana. You can trim the values and make your graph look nicer.